Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I'm Darren Moser.
I'm Philip Gilfus.
I'm Daniel Prue.
And this is City Alpha 3.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to City Alpha 3, one of the Nerd Party's Star Trek podcast. I'm Philip Gilfus, one of your illustrious co-hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my two co-hosts, Darren Moser and Daniel Prue. Guys, how are you doing, and how has your Star Trek activities been, if any, during this holiday season?
Let's see. It's been a good holiday season. I'm gearing up for another Star franchise, as you may have guessed, that's coming up. This is actually, as the time of this airing, we will have already seen the Rise of Skywalker, but it's a very busy week. Lots going on in Star Wars land.
Now, Darren, not to pull the curtain on your Hollywood existence, but are you going to go to one of the big pre-premieres, or are you going to be one of the Joe Schlubs, like the rest of our audience, and go see it in a theater after it's released?
So I'm working an event that is concurrent to the Hollywood premiere. That's all I can say at this time. That'll be on Monday. But then I actually am going to go to see it opening night at the Chinese Theater with a bunch of people with costumes, and I'm helping coordinate all the droids for that event. So that'll be a lot of fun. And for Star Wars fans, the Chinese Theater is kind of like the ground zero mecca for theaters, because that's where Star Wars opened. And so there's people who camp out every year that there's a Star Wars movie at the Chinese Theater, and it's just kind of a special significance. They usually do it and raise money for charity along the way. So especially nowadays that you don't need to camp out to get a good seat because you already bought your ticket, seat ahead of time. But yeah, it's a very busy week. New Star Wars coming out, and lots going on.
Now, I know you're an honorable person, Darren, but I just imagine having all of your costumes. You could just roll up to any Star Wars event and be like, yeah, I'm with, Kevin. I'm with the thing. Can I just, I'm just going to walk on,
I mean, that's true. It's one of those things where usually for events where like a theater or something like that, the theater would have to go through Lucasfilm, but during things like this, like a Star Wars release, they have a memorandum for that requirement, basically because it's just easier for the theater to directly contact us, the people with costumes. But I know what you're saying.
Thinking, a stormtrooper wouldn't do that, but I'm like, wait a minute, like stormtroopers are good? I mean, whatever. Oh man, try having that conversation with your kids where they know you are a stormtrooper and then they're watching Star Wars and they're like, wait, the stormtroopers aren't the good guys. It's like, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. So you can we're turning off this rebel propaganda.
Oh, that's totally what it is, rebel propaganda. But
what about you, Daniel? Any Treksmas going ons?
No, nothing other than what we're going to talk about today, although you just informed me that there was not one, but two short treks that came out this week. I only knew that there was one, so I guess I'm 50% behind. But Are you
going to save it in your pocket or just immediately?
That's a good question. I'll probably watch it tomorrow, I imagine.
But also, guys, we are under 40 days from Picard.
Wow. Do we have the official actual release date?
I believe
it's
the 22nd.
We do.
The
It's not in front of me.
23rd of January is what I have. So it's close, actually. That's really not that far away.
Especially with, the holidays and everything, it's going to go by pretty quick, I imagine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting. I'm very excited.
Voyager will fly right into the tree, and when it comes out the other side, it's time for Picard.
So I'm just saying next year's Captain Picard Day is going to be pretty sweet. But yeah, and just because I know we haven't all seen everything, but I'll just mention it quickly here. The two short treks that were released this month are The Girl Who Made the Stars and Ephraim and Dot, which were both animated short treks. So that's the first animated trek since 19
and the first CG trek.
See, I was kind of expecting the first one to be called The Girl with the Tardigrade Tattoo, but, it's a little too on the nose.
That's true. I think if I had to describe it, and I'm probably wrong, the girl who made the stars is probably CGI.
Yeah.
CG. And then Ephraim and Dot is more animated, though I know that's sort of a blurred line these days, but if we're just going to be technical. And I know you all haven't seen both of them, so I won't spoil anything, but I'll say the girl who made the stars was interesting, and it stars a young little girl, Michael Burnham, sort of the main person in that thing, without spoiling anything. But to me, it was good, though in and of itself, could have been done sans Star Trek label. I mean, it's a good short.
Didn't have a very Star Trek feel, is what you're saying.
It didn't have a Star Trek
it is what
point. I think I would. There was no reason for it.
She didn't draw the line here and now, guys. If that doesn't happen, then is it even Star Trek?
Yeah, but I mean, again, it's good. It's sweet. It's like a short Pixar. It's sweet. So I mean, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying.
I mean, guys, I know tardigrades. I know tardigrades and dots are cute, guys, but nothing is going to beat Baby Yoda right now. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I wasn't actually sorry. I didn't understand the title. Now that I think about it, because it's very oh gosh, what's the blanking? What's the Pixar one with the little robot?
WALL-E and
WALL-E?
Eve. Yeah, WALL-E.
WALL-E.
Yes, it's very. Yeah, it's kind of a. It's kind of a WALL-E thing with.
Because Dot is I don't even want to get into Dots because I was not a fan of Dots in Star Trek Discovery, but that's just once you start adding robots, it kind of changes things. But that's another topic for another day. I'm putting it on the list.
Yeah. So, but I thought that one was interesting too. There were some. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I'm going to say it anyway. There were some canon points I had a problem. I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but But overall, again, sweet story. So if you're looking for two sweet stories, short, animated things, these were definitely nice. So they were all very nice. So going from short and sweet to long and maybe ultimately rewarding, we're going to spend this episode talking about one of the Star Trek actors and important person we lost this month. It's been a month for Star Trek losses, and that's René Auberjonois, who played Odo, among other credits to his name from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, of course. But of course, many other things in his both Star Trek and non-Star Trek career. So, Daniel, just I pin it down to Odo or just René in general. What was sort of your sort of top things when you think about René and his role?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to Odo for me for sure. I mean, obviously we'll talk about the other stuff he did, both in Star Trek, and I'm sure we'll touch on this stuff outside of that. But Odo is such a great, awesome, fun, interesting character. Obviously, it's always sad when you hear the passing of someone that did some work that you respect, but it's we talked a little bit about this, I think, last week too, with people associated more with the original series. It's not that it's acceptable, but it's more understanding because that's from a generation previous. It's kind of understandable at this point why we're losing more of those people. But it feels like René was a generation removed from that, so maybe this is like the start of that next. Not in a good way, of the next generation of losing these people, unfortunately. But he was such a big part of Deep Space Nine and why I love that show. And we'll get into it, obviously, as we go on. But I love Odo. And René seemed like a really genuinely awesome dude, like a really cool guy. Like all the interviews I've watched of him and all the interactions I've talked to people that I've had with him, just seems like a really great guy. He also kind of reminds me, especially the older, more recent René, reminds me of both in disposition and physically, reminds me of my father. So I think that's probably a part of why I'm so drawn to him, because they have a lot in common. But it's sad that we lost him, but we'll obviously highlight some of the great things that he did for Star Trek here today.
And Darren, what about you? What are your sort of top? What's your sort of top or big René thought or memory?
Yeah, I mean, like Daniel said, just the character of Odo. I mean, it was obviously kind of the Spock Data outside humanity looking in kind of role, but it didn't feel copied or contrived. It definitely gave us something new and something fresh, and then it grew from that. I mean, we'll get into Odo more later, but the fact that, you know, he starts as just this changeling, the shapeshifter, but then like that race becomes pivotal in the overall arc of Deep Space Nine in a huge way. So and to act through all that makeup and special effects on his face and all of that, you know, that's difficult to do, but he always did it well. And, you know, as other people have stated, for his career, you know, in other roles in other places, from MASH to Little Mermaid, but just the sweetest of guys, it seemed. So he will be missed.
I was looking at his Memory Alpha page, as one does, and I thought it was interesting when it went under, you list all the credits, of course. Very well done, Memory Alpha, of course. When it lists appearances as Odo, what it lists is the episodes he didn't appear in. Because
oh, wow.
It's there's apparently, and I'm going to count them here. 1, 2, 3. I'll say 3 because from the technicality. So only 3 episodes he didn't appear in.
Which episodes are they? Just out of curiosity.
So Season 2, Paradise. Season 5, By Inferno's Light. Season 6, Change of Heart. And there's 2 other episodes, but that's because it's a technicality as not appearing as Odo, but René was still in the episode. Far Beyond the Stars. Oh, right. Odo's not in that. But, obviously he is. And then Strange Bedfellows, because apparently it's a Pa Wraith posing as Odo, but obviously René's still in there.
Interesting.
So 3 episodes. 3 episodes off of Deep Space Nine for René. So goodness. I bet you if we pulled up Cole Meanies, he'd probably like a quarter off.
Half of them, yeah.
And that's really impressive for someone who's not like, I mean, I would never think that, Odo's like, Benjamin Sisko I'd expect to be in just about every episode. Right. But for that, I mean, I think it's kind of, he's right in that sweet spot of secondary character where he's just kind of there. Like, the episode will probably not be about him at all, but you see him on the promenade, and then that's it. He's there, and that's enough to count in the episode, obviously.
I was just going to say, he always has a part to play. Like, even if it's not directly about him, there's some crisis on the station that needs Odo's assistance in some way, so...
Yeah, because I think, and we'll get into Odo just yet, but, unlike, say, a Worf, who's there to fire the torpedoes, Odo sort of wears many hats as, the chief of security, because he's the investigator, he's the security, he's also plays this sort of Bajoran role, as a Bajoran official, if you want to call him that, but obviously deep with Kira, a lot, obviously, that evolved around the series. So he has all and then with Quark, so he has all these relationships that sort of mean no matter who you make the episode about, he always has a reason to show up there, even if he's just standing in front of his office in the promenade.
Strange, like you said, with Bajoran. I mean, he's on a Bajoran station and all that, but he never did the nose. Like, I was kind of... I mean, I know the face. I know the face was tricky, but like you'd think of all the things to try.
Another kind of list that I thought was interesting, and I don't think I've ever thought about this. So he was, for lack of a better word, a semi-regular director of Deep Space Nine. So I'm going to go through these episodes. One of them, I think, is not as good as the others. But anyway, here. So these are the episodes that René directed of Deep Space Nine. Profit Motive, Family Business, Hippocratic Oath, The Quickening, Let He Who Was Without Sin, Ferengi Love Songs.
You like the Ferengi episodes, my goodness.
Yeah.
I know. Waltz, and Strange Bedfellows. So yeah, he seemed to be a good person for the Ferengi episodes.
I was always a fan of The Quickening. I know it's not the best of episodes, but I enjoyed it. Kind of that mystery.
Yeah. It would have been interesting to interview him about Let He Who Was Without Sin, because I know that's Daniel's favorite episode. I mean, Worf and Ryza. What more do you know?
Yeah, what more?
Well, let's talk about more positive things, and that's, of course, his portrayal of Odo. Not his only portrayals in Star Trek, but obviously that's sort of the meat of the role that we'll focus on here for a moment. So, Daniel, I know you've often had your critiques about Odo. So, I guess both as the character and as his portrayal of the character, what do you think of Odo?
Yeah, Odo is, as a character, especially early on, is pretty terrible. He not terrible. I don't think terrible is the right word. He's been through a lot.
How about I start, Philip? Let me. No, just
no. But he's a pretty.
well,
I would call him, especially as the series went on, definitely. But he feels like the archetypal, lovable grump. Yeah, because obviously later on when he starts to stretch out a bit, but his character. And it's honestly, it's all so. Like in the beginning, I don't like the character that much, and even towards the end, the decisions he makes are generally pretty awful. He makes them with good intentions. He just doesn't know better most of the time as a character. But as René acting through Odo, he does a fantastic job. Again, the lovableness comes from his portrayal. It's all through all that stuff comes through that makeup, and it's amazing. You root for Odo. You want him to win. You want him. Well, some people want him to get the girl. Maybe not necessarily everybody, but I think he had an amazing ability to just be that character and like physically, although he can't actually turn into a bird or a rock or anything like that. But René was great in the role.
He really did his best work as the serving tray. I mean, just bam, nailed it.
Yep.
I thought he was a good bar stool. Just me. But yeah, because I think the makeup, and it's just a trick of mind or of optical illusion or whatever you want to call it. Because especially with that voice, at least for me, I'll just speak for myself. He's obviously the age that most everyone is in that cast. Maybe a little older, but but because that makeup smooths him out so totally, it does give them his. Even though he is very gruff, but a lot of times he still has that sort of Data innocence, especially when he's meeting his people for the first time or exploring what it means to be a changeling. Or I just think of those times where he just has that sort of face of who am I and what does this mean, and just sort of having that quality of wanting to learn more about his people and what he can do, and I think he does have this huge range of being the grump, of being the guy who doesn't like his surrogate father, or who can be angry, but then also the one who also is with Loxana. There's this big range, but I think that makeup actually does a sort of trick of what you can think when you look at the character. So,
do you know? I was just thinking about it as you were talking about it. Do you know who he reminds me of? I guess retroactively, or who I should say might have been inspired by him slightly, is Ron Swanson, where he's business and he's all tough.
He takes the Colonel West mustache and well,
and then when he gets excited, he turns into a giddy little girl. It's funny,
Well, you're talking about the makeup and the smoothing. Like I just looked it up. Like René was 54 when DS9 started. But and I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I'm saying the makeup makes him appear much younger. Like it was always hard for me to nail down René's age, in a good way. Like with
I was going to say a little older than the average age of that cast.
True, but I think just with like Daniel said, the lovable grump, but we get. I mean, the writers, man, they loved him because they were like, hey, we're going to make this a lot about Odo, and we're gonna. He's almost the Data, like not in like every episode's about him, but like, hey, what should we connect this to? Well, let's connect it to Odo. It's like, okay, let's just keep that rolling. But but they find a way because he's the different character. Again, like Data's the android and Spock's the Vulcan. So being the changeling, he inhabits Dax's past hosts, and he shows up in. He could live through time.
Curzon. He plays
Curzon. Like, he does all sorts of things. So it's just a really interesting, way that they use this character. And it's not like, oh, what did Odo turn into this week? It doesn't become a parlor trick. But they use it when it serves the story. They keep that as a good tool in their storybook.
Yeah, I thought I was reading again. It's not in front of me, but reading his Memory Alpha entry. According to Memory Alpha, anyway, right? I assume it's true. Maybe it's not. But it said that he initially objected to the early series episode where he finally discovers his people, because he wanted Odo to be more mysterious, and about where he came from, and he thought, like, well, once you define it, then it takes out that mystery or whatever. But then it said he later appreciated all, like you were saying, Daniel, all the founders' backstory, and then what that
and I
ultimately
think
turned
because
into,
he was separate, like, just because you know the story of your people, if you've never lived with your people, it's really not your story. It's he kind of has his own journey that he's been on.
Yeah, and when you were talking about, Darren, about how maybe the writers like him, because and this is a guess, I don't know, I would think because he doesn't have any rules. Because in other words, and I know it's Deep Space Nine,
well, he's got his Batman I don't like guns rule, but
but because when he's not Starfleet, not that necessarily the Starfleet people follow rules, but he's not Starfleet, so you don't have to
Eddington,
follow kind of the
Eddington.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you don't have to follow the any kind of these prescribed Star Trek rules about what he does or decisions he makes, like Daniel would say. And he's literally a changeling, so you can literally do anything you want. And then and he's a new species, so you can just make up whatever. So I could see where it'd be fascinating to write for him, because you can do anything. There are no limits. And you can make him do sort of the bad things, quote unquote. I mean, not like a Garrick, but
and it's kind of good that they did give him though the limit of the face and things like that. Like if he could literally turn into any other character, as far as like fooling you, like I think that would have been too easy. It's like, oh, just have Odo impersonate so and so and get them to give up the like. Think of Pale Moonlight, where you have to convince someone to do something. Like if he just shows up as the Romulan ambassador and signs the whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like throwing that in the mix. Not that he would do that, but I think making it so that he can't just immediately impersonate anybody is a good limitation.
It's like when we were talking about the other week about the Betazoids. It breaks storytelling. And it's not good storytelling if you don't trust what you're watching all the time. If every single episode is a paranoid episode like Paradise Lost or Homefront, right? I think that was the one's called. That's exhausting to watch. Nobody wants to do that, even if they're on your side. If they're on your side, it makes all the drama worthless because it makes you have Superman on your team. But if
exactly,
they're on the other side,
it makes it too. It would make it too powerful. It's like the time turner in Harry Potter. It's like you want to use it, but imagine now after Odo, let's say in season 1 he perfectly imitates so and so. Now in any other situation where you're like, boy, it would have been really helpful if Odo had been able to do that. Like you'd be like, why? Starfleet's smart. Why wouldn't they do that? But by taking that off the table, they probably save themselves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So I'm going to then kind of talk about favorite or notable, because it may not be your favorite, but maybe notable, memorable Odo storylines. So I'll go with one that maybe might not be anyone's favorite, but I thought was interesting that they went with it. Now, they didn't go with it very long, but they went with it for a little bit, and that's when Odo loses his abilities. When the founders punish him for killing another
Make him a
changeling,
solid.
And they make him a solid. And I mean, because I when you were talking about Klingons, because there's the episode, was it the season opener? Anyway, I can't remember which of the season where they all, surgically made Klingons and got sent to, because they thought Galran was the changeling, and it ended up being Martok.
Was it not Galran?
But anyway, yeah. So, but just because I remember, Odo having to be altered instead of changing into a Klingon, when you talked about not being able to change. And so, but it was very interesting because how weak is the wrong word, but because he was going through stuff. That was the whole point of the storyline. But he felt weak. What am I offering to this team? I can't. I have to be.
Well, he's got to eat, and he's got to heal, and he's human for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. And I'd have to remember, but I'd have to watch it again, but I'll trust my opinion, that the episode where, the famous actor, whose name I can't remember, the one who plays the surrogate father, returns for, I think that was the second episode, when he came back to, nurse or train this they found a changeling, a baby changeling. And so they had to, work together. And he's, the whole, like, I want to raise my child. And you have sort of the quote-unquote grandparent, this is how I raised you. It was an interesting story. And then ultimately, when the changeling died and then gives Odo his powers back, he turns into a bird or whatever it is. I thought it was a very sweet episode. So, but anyway, so what about you, Daniel? What's sort of your notable or favorite Odo story?
I want to talk about that one because it is my least favorite Odo storyline. I think it's super lazy of the writers. I think it doesn't make any sort of sense. I'm a stickler for this sort of thing. It seems to be the easy thing to do in like super powered, usually like things.
I was going to say, if this had been a movie franchise, this would have been the second movie.
Exactly.
plot.
Yeah. The X-Men or Superman. Yeah. Spider-Man. Yeah. Like a lot of times, are these people the hero without their powers or not? Well, we know. It's lazy. It's lazy storytelling. So I watched, in honor of Renee, I watched The Ascent, which is one of my favorite
that's a good one.
Odo episodes. And it's where him and Quark get crashed on
yes.
And he doesn't have his powers during that
which I'd
time,
completely forgotten about. And then I was like, oh, yeah, this is dumb. It serves the story well in that episode because Quark has to actually put his big boy boots on.
Well, he would have just solved the problem like that if he had been able to shapeshift.
Yeah. He says that specifically. He's like, I could turn into a pterodactyl and just fly to the top of the mountain.
No, or an Arcasian razor tactile. It's got to be something like that. It can't just be that's seriously what it's.
Well, he's not from Earth.
I know, but I'm just saying, like in Star Trek, it could never be just a beat. It's got to be a Tenubula Denobula beat. It's like, no, of course that's what it is.
So it worked well for that episode, but then I was instantly annoyed as soon as he's like, oh, you're solid now, you got to eat, and I'm like, oh my god, I completely forgot we even did this, and it really bothers me that they did it. I just how do you make a solid creature a liquid creature not liquid anymore? It doesn't make any sort of. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
You ice him. You put him in the cooler.
See, I was just thinking about that when you say the because Star Trek does do that. I think they should go with sort of the Marvel / Thor thing of where Odo's. I mean, he's not Bajoran, but that's where he grew up, was Bajor, right, or whatever, wherever he was found.
The Denobula.
He should just name an animal. Yeah, but where he was kept in the tube or whatever. But if she should just name an animal and to Quark, be like, I could turn into a flageoring, and Quark's like, well, what's that? A flageoring. Big wings, right? They're everywhere in Bajor. What? You don't have one of those? See, I think that you just, you should name the animals, and the other person has to be like, I have no idea what that is.
I wonder if Odo could turn into fictional animals, like a centaur or something.
It's the limits of your imagination, probably.
Well, he can turn into any inanimate object.
How big could he get? I mean, because it's all like conservation of mass. Like, he can only get so big.
Is it, though? I mean, he can get pretty small.
Yeah, he turns into a mouse. He'd be a really heavy mouse.
Well, because remember, this is our future, right? So technically, Odo should be able to watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and I think he would like it. But
he'd be rooting for him.
Like, yeah. Oh, look at those bars. Just go right through them. Yeah.
Look at all the laws that kid is breaking.
He should be the one in the molten lava pit.
He's like I yeah. I was gonna say, like, he loves the character, but he also hates the character because he's the bad guy, and he's like, I'm so torn up about this character. Well, one of the roles,
typical of Earth.
One of the roles that René played that I really enjoyed. I mean, it was one episode, but he plays Douglas Past, who is the editor in The Far Beyond the Stars, and that's just. Again, I mean, I know it's one role, and I know it's
also the villain of the piece.
Yeah, antagonist of the course of events. I mean, that's the cool thing is, like, you say villain or antagonist, but he's just doing his job, and it's not within his power to correct the injustice he sees. So he's kind of head down. I got to do what I got to do, but. Man, that whole episode is just a tour de force of acting. My gosh, but. I really enjoy his portrayal of that, just seeing him not in an Odo role and just seeing René flex his acting muscles. And I think he did a great job. It's just because it's René. I mean, you could tell who it is, more than some of the others. Like sometimes like Damar walks by and you're like, what? Who is that? You know, or who's it? Cardassian Ducat. Whenever I see him out of makeup, I'm like, wow, or J.G. Hertzler, man, some of those, like, they have a lot of makeup on, so when they take it off, it's a big shift. Not so much with Jeffrey Combs, because he's in everything, so we're used to seeing it. But all that to say, I like Douglas's role, and I think it's, like we said best, it's an antagonist. It's, you know, something that Benny Russell, Sisko's character, is going against, but I don't say he's the bad guy. You know, it's not like he has it out for Benny. He's sympathetic, but he just isn't willing to go beyond his mandate because he'd probably get fired for it. But that was it was nice. I like this episode. I like the fact that all the cast get to kind of stretch and try something different. You know, it's nice when we get those Star Trek episodes. And all we didn't see was Yodo going back to like 1997 or something like that, which, you know, I think we missed out on that. But I know we had a little bit of that, but that's one of my top picks for René in his acting chops.
And what did you all think of the Odo-Kira relationship? And I'm saying that broadly. I could say Odo-Kira romance, but, you know, the whole 7 years relationship is broad. What did you all think of that dynamic between Odo and Kira as far as what he brought to that, Darren?
I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I felt it was... I think they did it in a nice way as far as it took its time. You know, it wasn't Ross and Rachel, like, on again, off again, on again, off again, stuff like that. I mean, it was really Children of Time? Yes. Where future old Odo, I think like 200 years or something, you know, told young Kira, like, young me had the hots for you. And he didn't say it quite like that, but that's basically what he said. And it planted that seed. Like, it wasn't, you know, it was a Star Trek way of the girl finding out that the guy likes her without the guy directly telling her, you know, and, you know, because you can't just have her over here at the locker room. It's got to be in the future alternate planet with the different time. That's when it happens, you know.
Well, yeah, Odo doesn't go to the locker room.
That's true. But yeah, no, I'll just say I didn't have any issues with it. I mean, there was the interesting episode where the shapeshifter was in the rock and was pretending to be Kira and trying to draw out the fact that he did care about her, and that was really interesting. I mean, that was I want to say bottle episode in the fact that it was just that location, cave. A lot of interesting things happen in caves in Deep Space Nine. You know, it's kind of a running motif. Fire caves, changeling caves, lots of caves. But yeah, I'll just say I didn't have an issue with it. I thought it was, you know, I would have been fine with Kira not pairing up with anybody, but I think the fact that she paired up with Odo, at least in that regard, like, I don't really know even what their relationship specifically was. It was it's complicated. Yeah, it's a very 24th century relationship. I'll take it, but no, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, and not to get
it's not like they got married. It's not like they had a ceremony or something, and like,
he got married to someone else. Because I was just thinking, you know, and not to go into
that's a whole nother subplot, but yeah,
right. But I'll just mention it because, you know, I'll go mention it. So the part where, and I don't even know what episode this was, but obviously this is later, and when sort of the climax, if you will, of their romance is when he transfers into a cloud. What is it? You know, whatever. And he envelops her, you know, obviously the sex metaphor. But I mean, you sort of think of, like, you know, a changeling solid relationship. I mean, obviously a lot of challenges, but that's one. But it was interesting that the writers, I mean, and the show explored how to do that. But then also the fact that they didn't have a happy ending, you know? So, Daniel, what'd you think of the Kira-Odo relationship? I know you're a big Bajoran fan, but nevertheless.
The thing is, and just as an aside, I just want to mention, in case we don't get back to it, the older, gruffer, not even gruffer, the older, I guess, kinder, gentler, friendlier Odo from that Time Planet episode is awesome. He was great. That's true. That was cool Odo. I liked that Odo.
He was chill. He had a couple hundred years to chill out.
Mellow.
One thing I want to say real fast, Daniel, is when Philip was saying, the issues a solid and a changeling would have. All I'm picturing now is like Kira coming home and like, hey, did you make dinner? He's like, I don't eat. or something like that.
You want to eat? You cook.
Push the button on the replicators right there.
Push the button, Frank.
And I will say, in terms of characters, if Odo and or Kira were to get together, or did, I mean, it's not like they didn't, it does make sense. I think they fit each other in a lot of ways, but I don't like don't like the romantic element of their relationship. I like that they were close and they went through a lot, under the occupation. I liked that, all that sort of stuff. And then up until they got kissy on the promenade, I was fine with it. Although I didn't, the pining, like Odo pining after Kira for years and years, it got old. I didn't like it. But that's just me personally. I just that's not my sort of thing in that scenario. But it was what it was. And like you said, it didn't end.
It's not your cup of Gino.
Exactly. And it didn't end with a happy ending. So it does. The bittersweet sort of ending that they had, I did like that. I appreciated that. And I thought that was a really smart way to handle it, because especially since what happens to Odo at the end with him going into the Great Link, I think that works out pretty well.
Well, and I like the fact that when they do become a couple, they don't change. It's not like Kira's now Mrs. Odo and she doesn't go on missions anymore and she doesn't do anything like
Kodo? What are we calling that?
But I'm just saying she doesn't, she's not sidelined. She's still the major or the colonel or whatever she is by then. And I think that's just because of the size and the way that they wrote the story well. But, in other TV shows, a lot of times when couples happen, then one of them ends up not doing anything anymore, and I'm glad that didn't happen. That's just what I'm saying. I mean, are we not going to talk about Odo's first marriage? Because that was another ride.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say briefly with the Kira, that they both had aspects that theoretically the other never forgave, but I guess they did, because we have to have romance. And I don't mean to be, make fun of that. But
you mean him being
we're just gonna skip over
the stuff he did during the occupation?
And the stuff she did. I mean, they both did things. They both have a lot of, red on their ledger, as we say in the Marvel universe. But because I think that is one of the enjoyable Odo episode, because there's several, is the one where they quote unquote go back in time to Terok Nor, during the occupation, and not Odo is in charge of security. And then of course it turns out it was Odo in charge of security, who ended up getting the Bajorans, framed or executed or whatever.
That's right.
But just showed his collaboration, maybe a strong word, but his collaboration that Kira never pictured him.
What is it?
Being.
It's not compliance. It's what's that word? I know what you're talking about. Like where it's like you're culpable. You're like going along with it.
Well, and that's the thing about Odo. Yeah. He's not really
culpability.
He's not
that's it.
Loyal to anybody. He just is. He is loyal to whoever's in charge. To justice. He says justice, but like you just mentioned that thing that happened that was not very. He's like law and order for whoever's at the top at the time, and he just he's fine with that. So, which is fine. That's just part of his character. But
yeah. Darren, what do you think about Loxana and Odo?
It's a fun episode. I mean, it's anytime you throw Loxana, anytime you throw her into the mix, you're in for a wild ride. But I feel, that they do kind of connect a bit. Again, people connecting in turbolifts is another theme in Star Trek. Be it the radish experts or when other things go on. But no, I enjoyed it. I think it worked well, and as the tiny bit that we got it. Like, I think if it had actually become a thing, I think we would have had problems. But the fact that it was just during the guest episode, I think that worked.
All right. And then, what about Odo and his people, the Founders, that relationship, which kind of had sort of a roller coaster from his point of view, maybe from both point of views, because I think about, especially during the second occupation, I guess if we're going to call it that, when Odo was basically alone with the changeling or the female changeling. She's a good name. For how long were they in that bedroom?
Was
it was like supposed to be like
weird.
weeks.
That was weird.
Yeah.
That was so strange, man.
But it was other than the sex part. But other than, but I mean the whole, how far, because appeasement's not the right word, but maybe it is because obviously the founders, the Dominion War, and he's sleeping with the enemy if you really want to get down to it. I mean, I get it. He's exploring his background. I get that. Well, I mean, I don't personally get it, but I can, sympathize. But it is sort of cross a line with that character with Odo at that moment. You're like, and then maybe even Kira asked him at some point, whose side are you on? But, what would you sort of think of that duality of identity?
Makes me think of Treebeard from Lord of the Rings, like, I'm on nobody's side because nobody's on my side. Like, that sounds like something Odo would say.
It's such a frustrating element of that story arc because you're like, Odo, what the hell, man? Like, you're just like, because he's like the whole thing last week, and he's in the bedroom for like 6 days, and he could solve the problem in 2 seconds, and you're like, I understand it. I understand the writing of it, like Odo's he's confused. He doesn't exactly know he's learning new things about himself. His existence makes no sense up to this point. But it's like, it doesn't endear him at all to the viewer. Like it paints him in a really bad light. And even at the end of it, even at the conclusion of it, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, you did that and you kind of screwed over a bunch of your friends, but okay. So it's weird. I know we just briefly mentioned about how weird that is, but it's really weird because like we get this sense that the female changeling is kind of like the matriarch. I mean, I know that it's not because they don't have that.
Yeah, it's hard to.
But you see it in that lens, and it's like she is like the leader, and she's older, and like, no, Odo, don't do that. Don't do those things. Don't.
She's the boar queen, basically.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Which is also, hard to... Because if the link is one, really, which, I mean, that's what they're saying, right? That's what they're saying. I mean, that may just be propaganda. But if the link is one, and if you really go down that road, then, like, what is Odo? Is he just a piece of the link? Maybe the answer is yes. I don't know. It's kind of all very interesting. But then that he ultimately chooses to go back to the link. I mean, what do you think of that conclusion? I mean, from
you mean the very end, right?
Yeah, and from a Star Trek standpoint, and this is my opinion. I'm anti-genocide. I would like to state that for the record. And so going back to cure his people, even if he finds them and their actions and their dogma and their everything wrong. I was going to say problematic, but they kill people. So
problematic.
Yeah. But anyway, but I can get back going back to cure your people, But staying, that's a different thing. So, you go back at cures because I saw the color change. So that lasted 5 seconds. He could have left after that, right? But no, he just wants to stay.
I feel like that would have not been... I don't know. I felt like it wouldn't have had the weight. It's like, oh, I thus dip my toe in the Great Link, and it's all cured. It's like, no, it's got to be. He's got to help educate his people. And I thought that's more of what he was going back for, to share his part in the Great Link to.
That's a good point, Darren. But once he dips his toe in, they know everything he knows, so he has done his job and educated everyone.
But we know that. But I get the feeling that it's
very Borg. Now
it's very Borg
here.
I don't think it would have felt as good. Just to not that it would have been a cop out. It's just I felt like there was much more weight in the way we got it. And who's to say that he didn't come back after a little while, like a year or something.
Season 8.
STO.
Yeah, Season 8.
Star Trek Online says he did come back out, so... Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I guess ultimately choosing his people, even if it's temporary, to leave Kira specifically, and then his friends in general, and his whole way of life behind, to be like, I'm going to go be with my...
Who's going to be the constable?
Well, I mean, to be fair, the thing is, he put the entire war on his shoulders at that moment when he made that decision. It wasn't just, oh darn, I don't get to be sheriff anymore. It was, if I go with them, they'll end the war, which will save everyone. Which, you know, and obviously he cares for his people. So I as both a motivation and a conclusion for his character, it makes a lot of sense because he wants to see the war end, and this is the only way the female changeling is going to go along with it. So okay. Then there it is, and I have to stay with them. Like Darren says, I bet. Well, you know, who knows now? But you know, and like 10 years after this event happens, I'm sure Odo would reemerge for the next galactic threat or whatever.
Yeah,
what's Star
I never
Trek
got the
Picard
feeling.
going to say about
Yeah,
this?
I never got the feeling that he was always staying there. But I agree with them not having him dip his toe and skedaddle off. Like we needed some sort of closure to that.
So the thing for me about Odo is not. Like plot lines, because he's so intertwined, like we've just been talking about the whole Dominion arc. And
when he added the belt, was that what it did?
The thing for me is the relationships, and specifically for me is the relationship with Quark. And I just want to talk about that just for a second, because they have the best adversarial buddy relationship, I think, in Star Trek, where they do like actively hate each other, but also actively love each other at the same time, especially towards the end. And
that man loves me.
You could see it all over his back.
And it's so good. It's so good from this. It exists from the start, and then obviously we learn it existed before, and then it works in such a subtle, beautiful, wonderful arc that at the end of the whole thing, they have a tearful, poignant moment together that's not actually tearful or anything like that on the show. And it's one of my favorite relationships in Star Trek, and I love Odo and Quark, and that's why I watched The Ascent, because it's what I come back to when I think about Odo, and they just are great. They're awesome.
Yeah, when I rewatched Deep Space Nine one of these times, I was struck by, because again I didn't watch it when it first came out. I was struck by how almost the beginning of every episode of like the first two seasons, they're like, we're just gonna have a Quark and Odo scene to start it off. And it's like they don't even seem like enemies. They're just both hanging around, just like the only two people in the bar. And hey, what's up with these Earthers? I don't know. Crazy, aren't they? You got it. And, and I mean, like that's how they start every episode. And it's like, oh, okay. They don't even seem like they hate each other that much, really. Well, I mean, one thing when I was looking at more about René is that, again, outside of the Star Trek universe, and of course, if you want to talk about his Star Trek 6 deleted scenes, or want to talk about his Enterprise episode, but multiple Tony Award nominee. I did not know that. He also won it once. He won a Tony Award in 1970. But yeah, multiple nominee for Tony Awards. He originated the role, one of the roles in Big River, which is a very good musical. And it's funny because he had that role in his premiere in Big River from 1985 until I don't have the year in front of me, but anyway, the person who took over after him was Brent Spiner.
Oh,
which I thought was funny. Yeah. So yeah, and then of course his TV work in Benson and Boston Legal.
Yeah, I'd never heard of Benson until he passed, and people started saying Benson. I'm like, what?
Really?
What is that? I'd never heard of that.
You're younger than me. Maybe that's why. Yeah, it was because it was probably I probably watched it live, but even reruns too when I was younger. I mean, of course I was a child, but still I saw it. So yeah, because of course Ethan Phillips is in it, and it's a political show. I think it's about a governor, and he plays this sort of prickly. It's a very Odo role, very political, like prickly political advisor. So he's all sort of like the bad guy, quote unquote. And then Benson, played by what's his name, Robert
Beltran
Jr. Yeah, who played in
Robert
Aaron Sorkin.
Guillaume. So,
yes.
I also see that Ethan Phillips had a role in it.
What was this? Oh, Sports Night. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, Ethan Phillips was in it. So yeah, that was very funny. And then of course he did the MASH movie and did a lot of voice work. Really too much to even talk about, to tell you the truth. But anyway, so I don't know, Daniel, final or thoughts about René and Odo and anything else?
Yeah, I mean, not much more than I've said earlier. It's obviously sad to lose such a talented man and what appears to be such a really kind-hearted gentleman. I love Odo; he's great. Deep Space Nine is one of my favorites, and it'll always be good to go back and see him some more. But it's going to be a little bittersweet now when I'm watching those Quark and Odo moments, and maybe I'll be a little sadder than I was before, unfortunately. But he gave us he gave great art in his lifetime, so I'm glad that he was a part of the Star Trek family.
Yeah. And Darren, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think, it's always sad when you have a passing of a Trek alum, and hopefully it'll drive people to watch some Deep Space Nine, because it's a great show, and he is definitely a big part of that. So he'll be missed, and it's a time of discovery for us to look at other roles he had and other pieces, and just to, reflect on his career. And he seemed like a very genuine man, a very kind man, and he definitely will be missed.
Yeah, and since it's the Trexmas season, the Star Trek Deep Space Nine documentary will be available, I'm sure, if it's not already. And I'm sure that's going to have lots of extras. The documentary itself is great, but lots of extras. I'm sure that we'll talk about Odo and all that. So Daniel, if people want to talk to you about your love of Bajorans, where can they find you online?
They can find me on Twitter at OneUpDan. That's the number one and not the worst. As in, Bajor is number one, worst planet in Star Trek.
And Darren, if people want to contact you about your new book series, Where's Odo, where you have to find out what he's changed into on every page, where can they find you?
It's a pad, so it's unlimited pages. You'll never be done. But they can find me on Twitter, Twitch, or Instagram at our username Dr. Sci-Fi, DRSCIFI.
And if people want to find me and talk about my new animated series that I'm currently making, one cell at a time, it'll be done in a couple decades, they can find me on Twitter at NCPublicServant. Well, until next week, I'm Philip Gilfus.
I'm Darren Moser.
I'm Daniel Brew.
Stranded here on City Alpha 3.